So you spent 10 years undercover on the dark web, hacking Hitman for murder sites. You were threatened by the mafia, framed for murder, and investigated, but found innocent. You have a total of over 200, and I could be lowballing this because my data might be stale, but as far as I understand, over 200 years of convictions handed down based on the back of your
Yeah.
research, presumably all while working a normal day-to-day IT job with people who have no idea who you are or what you're doing in the background. Now you're driven by this sense and obligation to save lives. Tell me again how you
I
are
mean, that's
not like the literal Batman. Like, are you literally Bruce Wayne?
the main difference between me and Batman is Batman is a billionaire. I
Yeah.
do shit for free, and it costs a lot of money. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, when you put it like that, yeah, I spend my spare time capturing this information and reporting it to journalists and police and trying to stop people being murdered and whatnot. And I would say mostly succeeding, which is good. But no, I mean, I do this because I have to, because of this data I've obtained. People have been murdered. Multiple people have been murdered, continue to be murdered. Only I have the data, so therefore only I can stop them. And murdering people is bad. Actually, you shouldn't murder people.
That's just
I don't
wild.
consider myself particularly driven. I don't consider myself a particularly driven person or particularly moralistic person. I'm just someone say, you know, if you can stop something murdered and that's like a credible threat, you should do something. Now you multiply that by about the 800 odd cases I've got. That's a lot of work. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's where I am right now, I guess.
That's amazing. I recently I came into knowledge of your work from a DEF CON video. So I was at DEF CON 33. Unfortunately, I guess you were unable to make it. That's sad. Hopefully you can make it next year. DEF CON's great. But I did see a talk by Carl Miller, who I believe is the tech journalist who brought your story to the world. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
Yeah, I have done some other journalistic collaborations, but working with Carl, with a UK podcast company, we spent, of my almost 9 years doing this, 4 of them were spent working with this podcast company in the UK. And yeah, it was, you know, it's net. You can now listen to the series, series 1 and 2, Kill List. I believe they're currently working on season 3. And it's basically all about, some of the history of me getting into this feuded website and getting into it and capturing the data. But then a lot of the content is like, okay, I get this data, I hand it over to the journalists and say, these people, like, there's serious murder plots here, requests to murder people, to do acid attacks at people, maim people, rape people, otherwise harm people horrifically. What do you do next when you have such an unusual crime and the police don't get it? It's international, you know. Website, we're obviously getting to it, but like, website's a scam, but it's not a scam, but it's online, but it's also real, but it's also not real, but also it might be real
Yeah.
because of what people are doing. And then trying to explain this to someone who's even au fait with both cybercrime and violent crime, it's still, never seen anything like it. And so that's where the hard work, a lot of the hard work is, I would say. And yeah, that's what I did with Kill List from 2020 to 2023.
It's just there's so much, as I'm sure you know, to unpack with this story. I mean, you have, like you said, you have the people posing as Hitman for murder sites, so which I'm assuming there's a non-zero amount of real ones. It has to be, right? At least one real one where there's some psychopath out there that figured out how to set up a darknet site that is willing to kill people.
There have been. Let's talk about. So, I mean, this goes into the mythos, right? Which is where I started. Actually, let me start with this,
Sure,
because
sure,
this is
yeah.
you touched on a good point there. You know, can you hire a hitman? Can you hire a hitman on the dark web? That was an interesting question. So I got into this right in 2015, 2016, because I was writing for Wikipedia about various cybercrime topics which weren't written up at the time. I was writing up about carding and credit card fraud and the history of that and how that all works. I was writing about the darknet markets, and the history of that. So in the darknet markets, you can commonly buy drugs and stolen data. Then there's all sorts of myths about, oh yeah, you can easily buy weapons, or you can hire a hitman, or you can buy this and buy that. And people thought, oh, you can just buy this idea evolved into, you can buy anything on the dark web. And then I started writing this up on the skeptic site, Rational Wiki, and I was writing about, oh yeah, you could escape AI systems on the dark web, escape from government laboratories. There's red rooms where you can see live stream murder and go in there and interact. You can,
So those are totally
go,
fake.
I mean, entirely fake, entirely
Yeah.
fake. Saying that, yeah, people saying you can go, you can go and find the forums where the elite organize their human hunting trips on private islands and whatnot. But this is bullshit. This is all bullshit. And for most people, I'm not sure if this applies to most of your viewers and listeners, but for most of your average person, the idea that you can, you can get drugs and stolen data off the dark web is as real as you can hire a hitman or any of these other out there ideas. And so I started debunking this and writing about this. And I mean, the open market for hitmen don't even exist. Yes, sure, if you're on organized crime, you might know someone, they might get someone killed off. That's not the same as you and I can knock on the door of the mafia and say, "Here's some money, please kill someone." Right? It doesn't work like that. There is no open market, and so the idea of this sort of anonymous Agent 47 style hired hitman who can get anyone doesn't really exist, right? And certainly not on the dark web, and certainly not as a commodity. But we do live in a world where murder exists, occasional intermediaries exist, and violent criminals exist. So there's a lot of blurring of the lines here, and there's a lot of ambiguity, and it still is. I set out to debunk all of this stuff. I have completely failed to do so. People believe even more bullshit than ever. Uh, uh, and I'm just can go on the side here. People say, "Oh yeah, all these websites they've been, they say these hackers got it." This just goes to prove that the FBI honeypots. It's like, no, if the FBI were doing this, I wouldn't have to do this.
Right.
And still, you have like these, people think these are harmless beliefs. Oh yeah, these criminal sites are run by the FBI, they're run by law enforcement, therefore we don't have to care about them. Or they're run by scammers, so we don't have to care about them. But the actual reality is that no one cares about them, apart from unfortunately me. And I'm in this unfortunate position. So it's really the morality is really complicated, and the beliefs are really complicated, both mainstream beliefs and people who should know better. And this is the landscape we find ourselves in, not only a few years ago, but still pretty much today.
So there's a few things here that you've pierced the veil on that are really interesting to me. First being that the assumption is if you work with law enforcement that it's just going to work out. But and the reality is, as you found, I believe you guys were investigated for murder. Didn't one of them send like a health check to either you or Carl's house to see if you're like mentally sound? You called police departments around the world and they didn't believe you. You actually called the victims or the would-be victims and they didn't believe you. It's hilarious to me because you would think like common sense would say, okay, well, if somebody calls me and says, that there's somebody that's going to murder me, that I would care. But in reality, because especially in the US, we receive so much fraud, so many scam calls from all over the world. We just assume that it's a scam. We just like instantly, we have legitimate calls that, from mortgage companies and all types of stuff. And we just like, oh, you're a scam, get out of here. So you kind of pierce the veil on that because most people would think that, you would get somewhere, but really, yeah, people don't believe you. And then also working with law enforcement. So yeah, it's not what people think, they are human. They have the same biases as everyone else, probably even more so. They have a higher level of needing proof to believe things. So part of me was surprised by the response internationally to the information you guys were bringing. And then the other part of me was like, no, I get it. It doesn't matter if it's in Germany or in Sweden or in, Canada. It doesn't matter if it's in the US or Mexico. The police are just people, they're humans, and most of them probably think, oh, it's not going to happen in our area. It's not going to, the spy thriller, as, some of them would think, isn't going to happen where I'm at. So it was very interesting to me how you guys overcame that by putting assets on the ground and having them actually go get in contact with people. I thought that was really smart, but albeit expensive, I'm sure. But you guys pierced the veil on so many things. But if we could, before we continue on that, because I really enjoy that story, I want to understand how Chris came to start hunting cybercrime on the internet, what do you do on a day to day? Are you like a legitimate Batman at work, or do you like are you a sysadmin? What do you do? You don't have to
Yeah,
name the company or anything. I'm just curious, like
I know.
what your
I'm
career is.
my background. I'm a sysadmin, or to be more specific, I'm a DevOps engineer. But to be more specific, I'm now an identity and access management specialist. So,
Nice.
I mean, it's whatever. It's a day job. I've been in IT for I think 18 years now. My background is obviously technology generalist, does everything apart from build the core software. I'm not a programmer, but I do build basic software and the like. So yeah, I know most things about sort of information technology and how it works. I think where I differ from your average techie is I have a much deeper understanding of the cybercrime ecosystem as it pertains to all of this. So one of my angles was, for example, before I got into this, was of course, even today you hear about data breaches or ransomware. You hear about, oh no, 10 million records stolen, or 5 billion, I don't know, emails exposed, or this many passwords exposed, or that many personal information exposed. And this meaningless headline noise right now to try and shock and awe people into thinking that something's big. And it's impossible for your average person to put this into any meaningful context in terms of economic impact or terms of personal impact. And so one of my first research projects, for example, was the Ashley Madison breach in 2015. I gained a copy of the Ashley Madison breach. It was the hookup site for people to looking to have married people looking to have affairs, and it got hacked very very notoriously. I got a copy of that, and of course, for financial compliance reasons, all the full address data was in the database for despite accounts being deleted. So I did some like data science on that and plotted out what's going on in terms of people around the world and whatnot. And then obviously read about some of the stories about people who were subject to harassing emails, the multiple suicides linked to people as a fallout of that. But also, some people being outed for, important people being outed for having affairs and whatnot, which is maybe not so bad, etc. And the human fallout of something like that was tremendous, and not really, in my view, not really properly covered, because we're used to thinking about passwords and records and databases and a very logical thing. But these of course people's lives behind it. Similarly, you'll hear about data breaches and like, but what? And I became, to be honest, obsessed. What do the crooks do with the stolen data? Why is it valuable? How is it valuable? And I learned out how like a full person's ID set can be used to commit credit card fraud, for example, or a set of credentials can be used in an automated checker to automatically check for password reuse and crack into more accounts of financial exploitation, or credentials in corporates, for example, will be sold on shady forums and to ransomware actors who will buy and sell them in order to deploy ransomware attacks and whatnot, and sort of really sort of humanizing the criminals behind this are the people affected. Because I feel in IT, especially, most people are blue team, most people are defending a set of assets or a set of things. It's not our job to think about that. We think about, we might think about threats. What happens if our data is leaked? Should we encrypt it? Should we do data loss protection? Should we have a layered defense and depth philosophy? All of that stuff. But once it's gone, it's mostly it's beyond our responsibility. And I set about looking at the whole economy of it, and I found it was poorly documented, poorly understood, and I just why I set out to learn more, which I of course regret now 9 years later. But hey, someone.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're driven by this sense of obligation to the people that could be in threat, could be in harm's way, which I mean is honorable. That I wish more people had that mentality. We'd probably have a much kinder planet if everyone had
Well,
empathy
I
for
would.
others.
No, I mean, most sort of professional red team pen testers who are not cyber criminals, right? They breach a customer's database, or they find some loose data on the internet from a company or wherever it's not secured. They know they can take this and either report it to the company, or if they're feeling brave and the company doesn't do it, report it to a data regulator or private intelligence company who will take this information and secure it and disseminate it to people, because there are processes and systems in place. right? There are processes. I mean, Troy Hunt and his Have I Been Owned site, but also there's plenty of people in private intelligence aggregating data breach information, and that becomes available in terms of password breach intel, in terms of personal credit check information, and other exposure intel, which is now, we can, there's a, the internet's almost built up an immune system there. In terms, it's not perfect, sure, but there are methods of a data breach kind of rectifying itself kind of some of the time through these methods that we have. That's good. So you say, and you think, find the data, you report it to the appropriate authorities like the company or a regulator or one of these intel things, job done, because the system is in place, right? Ultimately, it mostly works for people who can benefit from that system. There is no such system for murder for hire data. To draw another analogy, if I was finding information about terrorism, about gang activity, about gun smuggling, about child abuse, or about any other sort of mainstream internet cybercrime area, there would be existing structures for me to hook into and work with, and to disseminate this data. How can I put this? Finding these murder for hire data sets, if you can call it that, there's nothing. And so I have had to work over 9 years to work with various intermediaries and specialists and non-specialists to get this information disseminated to the people before they're murdered.
Have
And
you
that's not work to do by oneself.
have you seen improvements in the system since this has begun, or is it equally as hard to deal with as it was 10 years ago when it comes to reporting hire for murder stuff?
No, it's not improved much. What's happened over 9 years, fortunately, is that I've had so much success in the sense that I can now cite my own past arrests, my own relationships or successes with different agencies in
Gives you an
different
authority
countries,
base.
and say, this guy's legit. Look at all the stuff I've done. You can call any of these people. It's legit. This information is legit. This information will lead to investigations. This information will lead to arrests. It will lead to prosecutions. These are real nasty people, should be done. So I built up my own reputation. And that I'm able to leverage in investigations. And more recently, I'm able to investigate it in leverage in PR in terms such as this DEFCON talk by my colleague Carl. And, moves on to, we'll come back to it later. I'm now working with a whole bunch of volunteers around the world and investigators and journalists to do this. But ultimately, given up with, I'll give the data to one agency which I've worked with, or one journalistic agency, and they'll solve it all. I believe this many times over the years, and allow me to sleep at night and thinking, well, I have to do it. This agency's got it. I don't have to do it. This organization's doing it. And they would start and they would stop and they would start and they would stop. And I realized in the end, the only way to get rid of this is if I do it myself and I own it myself. And I wouldn't do this if I hadn't spent 9 years trying to get rid of it.
Yeah,
And so,
it's interesting. We, as common civilians, common people, we expect that if you report a crime to law enforcement, that they're going to want to take it on because it is crime and that is their objective, is to, get rid of crime. But in reality, I'm not sure how it is around the world, but I know at least in the US, there is an abundance of crime, and there is not an abundance of police. There's a finite amount of police. And a lot of times, police departments will look at it as like a business. They'll look at it as, a return on investment. They say, okay, well, if we're going to put $1 million of resources into this, what are we accomplishing out of it? Are we getting one person trying to sell 10 credit cards off the street, or are we taking down a kingpin? And there's like this balance that they have to strike.
yeah.
So yeah, I imagine having the authority base of the last 9 years or 10 years of data to be able to say, hey, look, we've actually taken this through to convictions, and here are the case studies around the world. That probably helps your case quite a bit, but I imagine that was a uphill battle to get there.
Oh, it has. Yeah. I mean, I've had to try everything. So I think I might want to tell you about how I got into the website and how I tried first to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let's.
Okay.
I do want to know. So, like I said, I'm very interested in Kill List. I'm very interested in that story, but I'm also super interested in how you got into IT and how you got into hacking. You mentioned you were doing identity access management. Is that what pulled you into
Nah, that's what
security
I'm doing now.
research? That's just what you're doing now. What pulled you into security research?
I've just been I'm just a seasoned sysadmin working mostly in small business. You don't have a security specialist, so you end up doing the infrastructure. Before you know it, you're doing the WAF, database access, credential rotation, threat modeling, pen testing, explain and trying to explain these things to developers and to business stakeholders and whatnot. It just kind of happens with experience in my case. I'm a generalist. You can do a lot of things. Yeah, again, yeah, we can talk about technology all day long.
Yeah.
I love talking about technology I used, for example, to extract and build my murder for hire investigation database.
Yes.
But ultimately, that's quite straightforward
Yeah.
in terms of software development and architecture. It's the other stuff which is less straightforward. But no, I don't know. I'm an IT generalist, security specialist. And I said I did not set out to do this, and not one bit. I love writing wikis. I think the standards by which properly governed wikis, such as Wikipedia, are written to, are a really common good these days, and I should be protected and should be encouraged. Even though, of course, it's very difficult to write for Wikipedia because so many of the main topics are already done, so it's not newbie friendly. But when I found a niche, which was like a bunch of cybercrime phenomena, and then later on cybercrime non-phenomena, I was able to write about stuff which wasn't covered before. And I was the first people to write about this and communicate about that and become experts in these areas. That was my interest, and having my strong technical background allowed me to see through the bullshit.
Yeah. That's interesting. So when you started investigating these sites on the dark web, did you so this is kind of like a two-part question here. Did you kind of consider them fair game because they were on the dark web, so laws didn't apply to hacking, more of a gray hat
No, it
approach,
wasn't
or
like that. It wasn't like that. I didn't set out to do well. I mean, I have gone after some sites which are bad sites, but that was later. That was later. Now let's talk about what happened here
yeah.
with my first encounter with this website, right? And it's quite interesting that it escalated really, really slowly. I didn't, people like, oh, Chris pissed off Chris, and then he hacks your website. Well, ultimately yes, but it was more complicated than that. So let's explain, right? So first of all, the worst sin was done of all, right? So I'm writing this article on Rational Wiki about internet assassination, saying all these dark web hitman sites are scams, and because they don't follow actual dark web architecture. They don't have references for webs of trust. They don't have independent feedback systems. They don't have independent escrow systems. They're literally a lot of them are one-page email here to get scams. They're scams.
So it started out as an analysis of their infrastructure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and on the dark web, I would say unlike on the regular internet, but maybe not. On the dark web, you assume things are scams unless you prove otherwise, right? Because there's so many of them.
Right.
All right, this is why there's great pickings for finding esoteric scams and stuff. Because why not? Someone's always trying it, and of course you can get anything on the dark web, right? So there's a sucker on every minute. So anyhow, I was writing this article about internet assassination, and it was quite good. I was like, yeah, like I've written it. I'm not saying it's had huge traffic or it was mind blowing, but it was the first of its nature, and saying, it's fake. It's fake. Internet assassination is fake. There are no clearnet or darknet sites you can go to openly buy Hitman for hire. And then we said so is a liar or a scammer or just some edgelord who wants to spread information.
So your assertion was then from the start that this was fake, and you set out to prove that they were all fake. Was that the
That's right.
premise?
Yes, because
Okay.
I was having enumerated a bunch of real darknet commerce areas quite well. I was then well positioned to enumerate the differences with the fake ones. So aforementioned human hunting expeditions, AIs, red rooms, and Hitman for hire type stuff. So yes, I wrote this article, and I thought that'd be the end of it. Frankly, yeah, I've just done another little brick into adding to the common good in terms of information out there for people who want to go look. But then the article was vandalized by an IP address from Romania saying that no, actually, all internet assassination sites are fake, apart from Besa Mafia, which can't be a fake because it has escrow and a link to the Onion site. Well, as you can imagine, I didn't take this well.
Yeah.
I've literally spent close to a year writing up about these scams, and someone's vandalized my wiki. It's like, well, you can't do that. That's not how it works. So I go to this website, this Besa Mafia website on the dark web. We haven't established. I think your readers know the dark web is an encrypted area of the internet, which you can access through the Tor browser. There's no IP addresses. There's a lot of criminality going on there in terms of underground sites, though the network itself can be used for bypassing censorship and other desirable means as well. So just established this for readership. I go into this onion site on the dark web, and I see this website called Besa Mafia.
Have you heard of them before?
And
Have you heard? No. Okay, so you had mentioned them before anything.
I've just seen it because it's vandalized my wiki.
So they brought a spotlight onto themselves, essentially.
Yeah. Well, they didn't know that. I didn't know the mess with me, but whether I've been successful or not is very subjective. I mean, I've fucked up my life doing this, but anyhow, never mind. So I go into the website and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So I go into this website and it's one of these dark web murder for hire sites, which I've seen quite a few at this point. But it's a little bit more than your basic one. Your basic one is basically picture, email here to get scammed, right? So they're not very convincing. This one's a bit more convincing because it positioned itself like a darknet market. Now, darknet, again, for your listenership, the very first darknet market was called Silk Road, created by a guy called Russ Ulbricht, and it combined the anonymity of the Tor network with what's at the time very new Bitcoin cryptocurrency, and it allowed people to, for example, buy drugs on the internet and relatively safely and securely, and that was pretty revolutionary. And of course, this is still around today. You can still do that.
I cringe at the thought that anything that he did was revolutionary. I'm sorry, I don't have I've been pretty opposed to him being released. I think that I mean that's a bit of a tangent, but yeah.
Let's have a little Russ Ulbricht tangent here. So just to be really clear, Russ Ulbricht did pay close to $100,000 to have 5 people killed, right? And the DOJ, rather than using this as extra charges against him, decided just to use it as PR material during his trial and never charge him with this. And because he was never charged, there are deluded people thinking out there saying, well, all he did was build a website. He just believes in free speech and ignored the fact that he paid for people getting killed.
Right.
Now, what's interesting, though...
Or facilitated all the other illegal activity.
Yeah. But what's interesting, though, is prior to Russ Ulbricht, it's very, 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 very unusual for someone to pay to have someone killed and get caught for it. It occasionally would happen with like a sting or something like that, but it's really unusual. I've made this process mainstream now, where people get paid, get arrested for paying to get people killed all the time. At the time, there was less president, and they wanted to get him for being a drug dealer kingpin and not for his murders. And from a PR point of view and from a getting pardon point of view, that was a critical error. And they shouldn't have done that. They should have played down the whole drug dealing thing. Well, get him a bit on that and get him on the murder thing, because the problem's not the drugs. The problem is the violence associated with drugs. Russ Ulbricht's attempts to kill people via Bitcoin payment on the dark web did a great deal to add to create the mythos that one can do this. And then Hitman have higher scam sites and the edgelords making stuff up really made it very popular. But back to my issue, right? I've landed on the website, and rather than looking like a basic one-page scam site, it looks more like a darknet market, which says it's got FAQs, about a login system, an ordering system, references to escrow and Bitcoin advice, references to security and OPSEC advice and whatnot. It's like, oh, someone's really put some effort into this. But it also had huge spelling mistakes. Images are very obviously downloaded from the internet. Incorrect security spelling advice is clearly made by someone whose English is not first language. Outrageous claims about having 100,000 users online at any given time and operatives in every country who can execute any job within about 1 to 2 weeks. So I thought that's quite funny. And I wrote a blog about it and say how this website is fake and it's quite funny, really. Shouldn't vandalize my wiki. And I thought that would be the end of it. Here we are 9 years later. We know this wasn't the end of it.
So what happened next? I'm curious how this transpired.
I was contacted via my blog at the time by the site administrator saying, "Oh, no, you don't understand. We are a legitimate Hitman service with real Mafia members all around the world. We want a true and honest interview with you because you're the one who is spreading misinformation, and we want to correct the record." It's like, all right then, Mr. Scammer. Try and persuade me that you're actually in the international murder network, but are somehow threatened by my blog. let's go for it. Let's go. And so we had a bit of a back and forth with him, and he was saying, "Oh no, we are getting we're getting our contractors to update that spelling mistake," or "Oh no, we are fixing that image now." "Oh no, that's not an issue because of blah blah blah." It's like, remember, I'd written the Wikipedia page for darknet markets. I know exactly how they work. Right down from the reputation systems to the Bitcoin handling to the webs of trust to I know exactly how they work. And this scammer is trying to tell me that his website's a legitimate darknet market. Ain't going to work with me, right? Could have worked with someone else, but not me. In the end, he starts threatening me and trying to bribe me. So, just here's some money to take down your review, etc. And I tell him to go fuck himself. And it all
Rightfully
ends
so.
quite abruptly. Right now, and I thought that, and I published that exchange on my blog, and I thought that's quite funny, thought that'd be the end of it. Now, this is where, for me, this is just internet bants as far as I'm concerned. This is nothing. It's a little anecdote. Yeah, I got in an argument with some fake online hitman, but again, right? It's nothing other than like a little bragging thing. But then 3 days later, I receive a message, and in the message is a link to a YouTube video. And into the YouTube video, someone's holding up a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper is my domain name, pirate.london, and their domain name, blah blah blah, .onion. So it was called dedication to pirate dedication to pirate.london. They're holding up a piece of paper and put down a piece of paper, and then someone is torching a car, and they're holding up the piece of paper in front of the car which is being torched, and it's going like that, holding a piece of paper, and I'm like, what the actual fuck? Right? I'm really confused here because the website's a scam. The guy's a scammer. Scammers normally don't do this sort of thing. And now someone's burning a car to intimidate, very, very much aimed at me. Not someone sending a picture at like a burning car. Someone's got my domain, their domain, my domain. They made a video for me of a burning car to intimidate me, to basically say, we are mafia, we are violent criminals, we are around the world, and you fucked with us, leave us alone. So that was confusing for me, and it was a very confusing time. So I had to go further at this point. So the website's fake. They're run by scammers. They don't speak English as a first language, and yet they can have people who can burn cars and intimidate critics. This is an unusual combination as far as I'm concerned. So I go into the website for real. So I go onto the website and I place an order. And I sign up as Booty McBoatface because it's 2016 and Booty McBoatface. And I take out a hit on Bob the Builder, the lovable UK children's character. And so Bob the Builder is now marked for death. And
Yeah.
I'm logged into the website. I'm as a customer, and I place an order, and I can see the internals of the website, from a customer point of view. And it says, "Oh, you should pay Bitcoin," or "What sort of violence do you want?" And basically saying, if you pay this money into this, we will hold it in escrow, and then the hitman will go and do the murder. And when the murder is confirmed, we will release the money. But if the hitman doesn't commit the murder, we'll refund the money. That it's implying like they're a brokerage service for the darknet, for like the darknet market would be.
It sounds super convenient.
Yeah, but that was the idea, and if that was their whole spill. Basically there's no risk because you put the money into escrow, and if it doesn't happen, you get money back, and if it happens, it works, and we broker any differences. Of course, there are no hitman, and the escrow site is of course run by the scammers. But
And I love that they were using Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is like absolutely traceable.
But this is in 2016, you got to bear in mind, right?
Yeah,
So
that's true.
not about cryptocurrency anonymity was not widespread then. The idea of Bitcoin tracing being used routinely to go after crime was not in the public consciousness, for example. But I know it is now. And what it is now amongst techies and people who know, I would still say it's not broad. People will still say, oh yeah, people can anonymously just do crimes with Bitcoin. And well, if they cash it out in North Korea and Russia, maybe they can. You know what I mean? No, I don't think that was misleading at the time.
You guys actually did use that, didn't you?
You
actually used Bitcoin addresses to trace it back to.
We're coming back to how the Bitcoin tracing and how this was like instrumental in most of the convictions, for example. Come back to that. So I'm in the website, right, and I can message and the order, etc. I'm like, oh, so my order in itself creates the message. So in message, in the address bar, it's like blah 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 blah. Message ID equals 123. It's like, okay, so it's a messaging system. It seems to use an incremental system. What happens if I change that to 122? I changed it in the address bar. I got someone else's message. 121. That's
Nice.
someone's message. So as you measure it, quick script enumerating the IDs, download. I've now downloaded an entire message database.
Nice.
I should point out the minute you modified that ID in the address bar, that is as a crime. That is considered circumventing a security control and is considered breach of computer laws in the UK and the US.
It-
Well, it's one thing to go off AT&T and never to go after a website selling murder, I would argue.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you, when you were doing this, did you take it any further? Did you try SQL injection? Did you see if they were, did you
No,
try and get like a web
this happened
shell
later.
or?
I did loads of stuff against the website. This happened later, though. I did everything.
Okay.
Everything you imagine I did against the website over the years.
Nice.
So, but my point is, at this point, I got my first peek of the messaging database, right? And I reconstruct it based on username and ID and all that stuff, and reconstruct that into individual messages. So I can immediately, well, almost immediately, I can see now the conversations happening on the website. Now, of course, I knew the website was a scam. There's no hitman. It's just a bunch of scammers trying to steal money. But now I've reconstructed the message. The customers don't know this, right? And I can see customers from all over the world. They're talking about who should be killed, why they should be killed, when they should be killed, how much money they were willing to pay for them to be killed. Here's the money for them to have been killed. When can you do it? Can I get it? Can I make it look like an accident? Can I pay more to make it look like an accident? Can we, and so on and so forth. And usually going into why haven't you killed them? Give me my money back, of course, because it's a scam. But there's like social media, photographs, addresses, and the people using the website are really serious or appear really serious to get these people killed.
That's the most disturbing part of this story is that I don't know if you've actually published the messages or not. I'm not encouraging to or not to.
I've never published messages.
I believe reading through that though would be such a window into just the darker side of humans. It's such a raw and unfiltered perspective that people don't usually get. It's just pure hate, right? I imagine you just all your insecurities pouring out into wanting somebody murdered.
I mean, you'll see some of this stuff on Twitter, to be fair.
Yeah.
On social media.
That's true.
Saying,
which is even scarier.
This person should be killed / cancelled. Look, here's their docs. What a terrible person they are. Let's get them fired from the employee. Look, here's their family. Here's their social media, etc. The internet pile-on and the kind of anonymity afforded by people. It's not entirely dissimilar from that, except rather than usually going after someone who's made a ill-thought tweet or someone who's, or something like that. Well, instead, it's going after individuals in these people's lives with more individualistic motivations.
It's somebody they know, and it's more than just words. I mean, they're actually putting money behind this. They're actually taking action. It's so surprising to me. By the way, I looked at your site today.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's hitmanscam.org. And on there, it said that there were still 78 people in the United States and that number, I don't know if that's up to date or not, but it said there were still 78 people in the United States that had actually paid money to have somebody murdered. It's just wild.
So you got less than half of them being arrested. So I'm still working on that.
That's crazy. I mean, you would think that any amount of people that want to pay money to have somebody be killed would warrant an investigation, but to have that many people just floating around out there, and I imagine we could remote in a police department right now, and they would probably shrug, and if they even knew what to do, it's crazy.
We can talk about the whole police logistics later. I'm like really au fait with how it works, how it doesn't work, and the narratives necessary.
Yes.
But I naively thought when I got in there, right, I've got at this point dozens, not hundreds, dozens of serious and dozens of less serious murder plots around the world. Well, this is a crime, right? This is above my pay grade as someone who writes a Wikipedia. This is a job for the police.
I think most people would agree that paying for murder is a crime. Yeah. In most first world countries, right?
You would think. I can tell you countries that don't agree with that, and that's interesting. But so I mean, there was a few other events happened here before I go into with the police, right? So around the time I get into the website was also hacked by a hacker from the UAE. Some of the information was dumped, and this creates some media attention. And that information itself did actually end up in the hands of the FBI. Now, I'm going to come back to this in a sec. Right? So, some of this information was investigated. For example, where the cases pertained to murder orders in the United States, particularly when money was paid, there was a nominal level of investigation by the FBI. We know this, for example, because the FBI met with a couple in Minnesota, Amy and Stephen Allwine, because someone on the website had targeted Amy Allwine. She's a dog trainer, Christian woman. And she's living in a small town in Minnesota, and someone wants her killed. And she's like, "Who the fuck can this be?" Right? And she doesn't understand. But there's this plot with messages and like $15,000 payments and
That's a
more
lot of money.
payments.
That's not a small amount of money.
Exactly. So the FBI sat down Stephen and Amy Allwine in a room and said, "Well, we've got these messages. I think they showed them some of the messages. Do you know any idea who that might be?" And Stephen replies, "No, I have no idea who that might be. We better buy a gun for self-protection." And then the FBI fucked off, and they didn't inform the local authorities. And that was that. That was the extent of the FBI's initial investigation in 2016. And presumably there were a couple other ones like that in the US as well. Now, all right, that's obviously going to come back later. So I spent 2016 basically running around trying, talking to my local police, talking to my police in London, calling up the FBI, and everyone, because I couldn't at that time. It wouldn't even occur to me to call up local police in local jurisdictions because I could not process this information. We're dealing with scores of people, right? I didn't set out to investigate. Like, got a bunch of crime, national force, take my bunch of crime, please, because I can't deal with this.
It had to be surreal.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't understand this. Now, at the time, that's when I first met Carl Miller. He was a associate of, he has a colleague I knew, etc. And I sat down with him and I showed him like the burning car video and some of the messages, etc. And he's like, "Wow, this is crazy." And he set me up as an informant with the National Crime Agency. So, National Crime Agency is like the FBI in the UK, but even worse. And but nonetheless, I was set up as an informant there, and it ultimately led to me like having a meeting and giving them a presentation, explaining the website and like the top names I'm concerned about, and the money paid, and the actors involved, and the necessity for US, UK, and ultimately international investigation of these cases. Because I'm just trying to explain it to them,
and surely they took it serious.
Well, those people did, and they're like, "Wow, you should be working for us. That's amazing. You found it." Like, "Oh, well, okay, I just want to get it off my hands, please. Can you help me?" Now, rewind a little bit. Throughout 2016, after the hacks against the website, me blogging against him, the guy behind the website, we know him as Euro. That's what his general alias is. He's getting pissed off that I'm basically shit talking his website and saying he's fake and saying that all Hitman for Hire sites are scams and that his website's insecure and his website's being hacked multiple times.
That'd be the most offensive thing, is tell me that my site is insecure.
And he's saying, "Oh no, so the website was hacked, but then the data was replaced with fake messages." And it's like all sorts of cope going on with him there. He's not happy about this because he's an internet marketer trying to protect the reputation of his website, and more people can Google his website and find out about the hack and the scams aren't going to use it, right? So this is genuinely commercially impacting him. So he pays some freelance, search engine optimization specialist in India to write a bunch of blogs saying that Chris Monteiro runs Besa Mafia. Chris Monteiro built it. Chris Monteiro is behind this.
Can we just pause for a second? I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but I remember I was listening to Kill List, and early on in Kill List, they spoke about this person's marketing capabilities for their site. And that it wasn't just a darknet site that they set up, but they had heavily leveraged SEO optimization and fake blog articles and everything to talk about how great their site was. I just love that. So I just want to provide some color that what you're describing literally right now is not new to them. They had been doing that, right?
Well, no, it was new to them at the time. Over time, they evolved in this kind of network of self-promotion sites. They were trying things like personal testimonies, blog editing, wiki analyzing, posting on Reddit, paying people off on Reddit who shit
Wow.
talk them. They were trying anything to try and get the word out about their website. You know, or if they weren't promoting the website, they're promoting "Stop Besa Mafia." You should stop it because it kills hundreds of people every day, and you should take it down. It should be investigated by the police, and you shouldn't go to it because you can get anyone killed. And here's where you go to it to get people killed, and it's really bad. You should never go there.
So
So
no
that was one of
PR
their
is bad PR was their strategy.
well, no, they didn't want to be known as scammers. Knowing it's scam and it's fake is bad. Knowing that the website is you can kill people or it's bad that you can kill people, that's what they want to know because they wanted to add to this explicit mythos of you can kill people on a dark web. The same one I basically started my short mission to debunk and to remove. They were financially motivated to promote that their website is legitimate and you can kill people via the internet. So we ended up being at loggerheads for all of 2016 over this stuff. So he's writing web blogs saying Chris Monteiro is running Besa Mafia. But I didn't give a fuck about that because you'd have to be an idiot to believe these random blogs written in bad English by idiots. Besides, I was working as an informant for the National Crime Agency at the time, and I'd reported to multiple agencies, and I'd written a bunch of blogs about it, and I'd been in some media pieces about it, and I was still trying to get him investigated. What have I got to worry about? Well, if you know what happens. So, in late 2016, as mentioned before, there was an order on a website to kill woman Amy Allwine in Cottage Grove, Minnesota, with $50,000 were paid. And no spoilers, but it was Stephen Allwine. It was the husband. And, so they're religious. They're in a part of religious community where you can't get divorced. So obviously you turn to murder, whatever.
Naturally.
Yep. So Stephen, after failing to get a divorce from his wife and failing to get her killed via this dark web murder for hire site, I think he tried to purchase some scopolamine off the dark web to try and drug her. That may have happened. And ultimately, with the gun that he got after the FBI met them, saying, well, but yeah, a gun for self-protection. He shot her. He faked her suicide, and and then called it in. So, my God, my wife shot herself, and tried to play the victim to the police.
Wow,
So,
I can't believe that. I can't believe that he wasn't being monitored or anything after. I mean, just
but the local police went.
It's hard to express that. The fact that they weren't even notified. I'm guessing they picked him up immediately. I mean, they had to have figure it out.
Yeah,
right?
so basically what happened is, Cottage Grove police are on the scene. That's the local police, and they see the scene of apparent suicide, and apparently distraught husband and child there, and they're like, okay, very sorry about this. We just need to do some investigation. Get up the black light. What's this? Bloodstains marks being dragged from room to room. It's saying the suicide. Lock down the scene, right?
Yeah.
So full props to the Cottage Grove PD. They're doing their job, and the like. And then they've got him crying. They've got videos of Stephen Allwine crying crocodile tears in front of the police, saying, "Oh, my wife, I loved her so much. You just murdered us, fucking piece of shit." And you've got him joking on the 911 call, where he said, as like his son saying, "Oh, Daddy, you going to be married?" And he's like, "Oh, we'll see."
Jesus, what a scumbag!
But he's a terrible, terrible person.
I still can't believe that any law enforcement wouldn't absolutely run down every lead when it comes to somebody physically paying, even if it's $1. If you pay somebody $1 to go murder somebody else, you would think that transaction
would. To logistics at the point. It all comes down to logistics and the fact this is national, international, without a geographical thing. It all comes down to that, without any existing structures and systems. That's the problem. But we can come back to this, right, as we get into the whole investigation phase, right? So what happened there, I don't know the exact sequence of events, but I believe once the Cottage Grove PD booked the case, this pinged something with the FBI. The FBI that pinged the fact that they had a previous investigation. Then I believe the FBI then Googled for Besa Mafia, having known that Stephen Allwine the Allwines were a person of interest. And what did they find when they Google it? a bunch of blog articles saying Chris Monteiro runs Besa Mafia. So they call it in the National Crime Agency in the UK, working for, by the way. But the part they're calling into don't know about this because it's all compartmentalized left and right hand. And then the National Crime Agency are basically one fine morning breaking down my door with a sledgehammer and
Wow.
arresting me for both the involvement in arranging Amy Allwine's murder, but also for arranging dozens of murders around the website, for
So
running a murder for hire website.
they actually raided you. It wasn't like
Yeah.
they called you into the office and had.
No.
Wow.
Battering rams, handcuffs.
Wow.
I was in jail for 2.5 days.
Wow.
Wasn't happy about this. And they only had it. I mean, I'm going to ask him a bit if you want. It's obviously not very fun. But like, they had a warrant to get me as some sort of murder kingpin, right? So they were like, show us the data about the website. It's like, well, I don't keep it locally. I keep it on a remote server. That's not on the scope of our warrant. Shit. Who do you pay? It's like, well, the payments, which were not going to do me, are on the server. And they're like, shit. So it took them bloody another 24 hours to get a revised search warrant so they can access. I was like trying to say, look, I have a website. I built this for the police to go there where I've got all my data about murders. So please go in there. And I got them to go onto the website eventually, and they went through it, etc. And they realized, of course, to leave that they fucked up big time. And they never acknowledged the fact that I was working as an informant for the NCO at the time, and they let me go.
Well, that may have played in your favor, right? That they didn't tell anybody. I mean, was it broad national news that they had captured you, or that they had brought you in? It was all under the covers.
This wasn't news because you bear in mind, first of all, it was really traumatic for me.
No, I'm sure it was.
really
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was really horrible. And for my position at the time, the most important thing was I'd hand over all the data, including IP address data about the servers, which I'd could rewind a bit. Yes, I got the IP address data for a mix of direct objects and what I used. I used SQL injection, and there was a content management system misconfiguration, which allowed me to address it. Anyhow, managed to get. I mean, there's a whole point why I broke into the website.
That's what everybody wants to hear. Everyone wants to hear about the steps you took to root.
Let's just finish this up and go back in.
Sure.
Yeah, I gave them the IP address data, and they basically did a 2-month half-assed investigation. The fun tech stuff, really fun tech stuff, was all in 2016, before this went down, before I realized that there were real people involved and that the police were that incompetent and would fail to investigate things. Now, the stuff I did included, so as mentioned, manipulating the message ID to enumerate the messages because they weren't properly secured, going to open directories to download the folders because they were listing them, getting config files. For example, one of the config files was an unused mailing component, which contained the username and password for one of his email addresses, which I then logged into. I then used the password reset to another one of his email addresses, which I eventually got into, which I then used to reset his access to a bunch of his marketing sites where he was working on hiring freelancers to write in copy and to promote his website, etc. So I not only managed to rip out his marketing operation at the time, I also managed to steal the onion key for the website, spin up my own site, shut him down, redirect the onion website to a Besa Mafia's closed page with "so long, well, Advitas and goodbye." That was fun.
Did you do that immediately, or did you string it along?
This took months. This is over the course of 2016.
Okay.
Got an email here, onion key there, a partial injection here, a web shell there.
How long did it take for them to become aware of your presence? If you could share.
They shouldn't have been aware at all.
Okay.
Except that I mean, are we naming names in this podcast? I'm not sure.
You can do whatever you're comfortable with. I'm happy to cut out whatever.
Names. I've been bloody pissed off about it for years. In 2016, I had done some basic article for Vice at the time about some hacking thing or other, probably to do with Freedom Posting 2 or something like that. And I had what I thought was a pre-existing relationship with a journalist there. So when the website was publicly hacked by this hacker in the UAE, talking about this website, this fake murder for hire website, I was asked for comment by the journalist saying, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a fake website. You've seen my blog about it." And I say, "Oh, by the way, off the record, I have access to this website still. I'm just getting the messages. This journalist, Joseph Cox, published this, my off the record comments in his article. And he now works for 404 Media. And he doubled down when I said, look, the fact I had access to the website was off the record. What the actual fuck? Can you take it down? Well, as a journalist, I feel like I can do whatever is necessary to write a story or some bullshit like that. So he outed me. He outed me as having been involved in ongoing hacking against the website, which I was trying to be covert.
And he named you.
Yes, he named me. He said Chris Monteiro also hacked the website. That's what triggered Euros writing the blog articles about me.
So they saw it. Well, I'm guessing they probably they probably were searching for media about them, right? And then they probably came across this article. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty crazy that they would name you like that, especially for something that's ongoing. And they understood that, this is ongoing investigations and that you're working with the police at the time. And wow. Yeah, that's nuts.
But so ever since then, I've been forced to use my real name doing this. I still proxy a lot of my investigations, but yeah.
Have you received further death threats? I know you received at least one death threat, right?
Oh, so many. I mean, but it's only they got better things to do. They're making millions of dollars scamming people. They send me death threats from time to time, whatever. But
so they are pulling a good income from this.
Oh, so much money. They've made millions and millions and millions, especially factoring you're dealing with Bitcoin from 2016 to 2025. You factor in the inflationary of Bitcoin in there. They're multimillionaires.
Are they setting up further sites, or do they keep operating?
Yeah. This happened later on. I mean, they have a whole network of ClearNet advertising sites, Hitman comparison sites, at least the top two, which are run by them, which run the same code base, but then independent escrow sites, which run a modified version of the code base, all of which use the same admin backend, all of which I had access to.
Wow. Nice.
So yeah, and plus darknet advertising, ClearNet advertising, they had it all. They had the ClearNet market for fake Hitman sewn up, and probably half of the darknet market for fake Hitman. So they ultimately gain a lot of traffic there from people because we'll go back to because you can get anything on the dark web, right? Hitman, drugs, it's all the same, right?
Sure.
And you have millions of people doing that. Cut that down to thousands of people going to the website. Cut that down into hundreds of people using the website, and then you've got people and then there's shitloads of people. You end up seeing their murder plot orders coming in.
What's the craziest one that you've seen? What's the one that when you saw it, it shocked you the most? If you want to recount it, I understand that when you're talking about real people, it can definitely be different.
So talking about the technology of it and my investigation is it's hacker stuff, a bit of journalistic stuff, a bit of internet drama thrown in there, etc., etc. It's nothing, it's like, oh yes, someone did something with some websites, whatever. It's the real person stuff. Obviously there's the Allwine murders led to my arrest.
Which is horrible.
Okay.
I still can't believe that wasn't wider. I mean, I don't recall ever hearing about that. Not to say it wasn't national news.
Well, it wasn't covered. It wasn't covered.
Absolutely crazy.
Because again, I had handed over data at that point. I handed over the IP address data to the server. I ran a 2-month thing. I was out. I took a whole year off after that. I was like, I'm done. I'm out of this shit. And it was only when I was approached by a CBS 48 Hours who were doing a documentary at the Allwine, and they're like, don't worry, it's run by the police. I went back and found I still had access to the website and they were still taking orders. So from 2017 or so.
So they just did not give a fuck that you were publishing this information or anything. They kept on going.
Well, I've never published much information until recently.
Well, I mean,
recently
that you had your name out there that you were doing this investigation. This murder.
No, I was in there as then Chris Monteiro's hacked the website, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then Chris Monteiro's vulnerabilities, Chris Monteiro's making fun of it, right? Which I was.
Mm-hmm.
That turning into basically where I am now, as in using that data set to perform international investigations. This is a slow process which has taken many years for me to almost professionalize and get good at. And this is taken a while. It's only recently now that I'm even talking about this. Previously, I was relying on journalists to do this or law enforcement agencies to do this. It's only now I realize that no one will take this off of me.
What made you want to go public? I would think that by you going public, it's going to make your mission harder. wouldn't it, to stay under the
Yeah,
covers
well,
and
the
detect
main
these
thing
things?
is that if you listen to Kill List, which is pretty good,
It is great.
covers
I listened through at least 70% of it. It was awesome.
yeah. Yeah, and but it talks a bit about my history of the website, and then it talk and what happened, etc., and then the investigation, and then it deep dives the cases. Well, Kill List did one thing which really pissed me off, which is due to editorial decisions possibly beyond their control, decided to frame this as with all the data collected and all the information handed over to the police, a job here is done, and now we don't have to do anymore. I'm like, whereas I'm behind the scenes saying, so guys, what's it going to be? What's the call to action going to be? Is there going to be a microsite? Are you going to have context? Are you going to have follow-ups? Is there going to be follow-up media? Is there going to be discussions? What are you doing it? And it turned out his editorial decision was to refer the information as being concluded and no needed, and therefore no action being taken. So this, even though I spent like good 4 years working with Curelist on this, this ruined what I was trying to achieve in terms of using this as a platform for self promotion, building connections, and furthering the connections. So I have, whether I may work for them again, but under different circumstances. So that was really frustrating after spending 4 years of doing that. And so ever since then, I'm like, well, I'm doing my own PR then. I went on Darknet Diaries. My colleague wasn't not speak. My colleague Carl went to DEF CON, so he wasn't speaking on behalf of Kill List. He was on his own capacity. And I'm doing this. I'm doing my own PR now to talk about things because I can no longer rely on any agency to own this.
This
That's why
story
I'm doing it
needs
now.
this story needs to be heard. Of all stories out there, stories about people in your local community that are literally paying money to have other people they know killed, like that absolutely needs to be brought to the public. My question though is, by you going public, do you feel like that's going to inhibit your abilities to continue to detect these things, or do these Hitman for Hire sites just not give a fuck that you can see the messages?
Let's talk about what happened then. Again, we'll go back to some specifics of the cases in a minute. Um, in 2022, I think it was, we had made so many arrests and had so much Bitcoin data, which had passed to the FBI and in turn passed to Homeland Security investigations. Homeland Security investigations was able to work with Romanian police and able to arrest at least 5 people behind the website. So one of the scammers behind the website. So you can see this wonderful video montage of the scammers having their doors knocked down and them being thrown to the floor and them being arrested, which is great. And that was a good day for me. However, 3 days later, after this, they're all let go due
Wow.
to corrupt incompetence or jurisdictional issues with Romanians. And after that point, the website started to lock down. They started to move admin interfaces around, add authentication where there previously was no authentication. And by by some point in 2023, I had been completely locked out of the website, and so I no longer have access to it. So I have simply all the data set I've accumulated between 2016 and 2023. Of this is what I'm trying to get rid of. There's about 800 actionable names I'm trying to work through internationally. I've done a lot of work on sorting and typing them and verifying IDs and making it actionable and link it to geographies, all that sort of stuff. What's my point? But yeah, and also you can bear in mind, and as the messages go on the website, the crooks delete the messages as they go along, so that they don't have any evidence of what they promised or might said or might have said, etc. So they don't keep much. They only keep a few weeks of data at a time, which basically means I have the only copy of the data. Even if you arrest the Romanians, break down the doors, seize their servers, you don't get the data. Only I have it. So this is I'm in a uniquely terrible position whereby I, by virtue of the only one with the data, I am the only one who can take action, and therefore I have to do it. It's not like, oh, someone else will do it. Who? With what
Yeah.
data? When?
And you can't
There's no
publish
one
it
else.
because you could be putting people in danger by publishing
Yeah.
it. Wow. Yeah, that is a difficult position. And I know we've spoken about a couple times the logistics of it, like the law enforcement logistics of it, and who has what right and what jurisdiction. And man, yeah, that is like a criminal loophole that it's just so
Well, it's still,
hard to get traction
yeah.
on it. It sounds like.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the investigations then. Notably working with Killers, which was most effective. Yeah, they tried phoning people up. I didn't get anywhere. They like consulted with psychologists, and psychologists like, well, first of all, people will be very upset when you tell them someone to kill them. No shit. And secondly, the person who wants to kill them may be in the same house, maybe in the same room, and you tell them, God knows what I could precipitate. So like, okay, we'll just call up people and arrange to have them have one-on-one calls. People don't do that shit. They don't. You say, "Hello, sir. I'm afraid I've got some very important information about threat to life. Can I arrange to talk to you when you're alone?" They're like, "Get fucked."
Yeah.
No one would do. No one. Which is I always have a good laugh with Carl about this because some people are like, "Well, obviously they would say this. Obviously they would do this." And it's Carl making these nervous phone calls. They're getting hung up on again and again and again. But you bear in mind, right? No one's ever done this before, and yeah, I mean, I and Carl and the Kill List team tried doing it the proper way, taking it to the police, calling it the FBI, calling up the local authorities. And yes, one of the first calls Carl did when calling up to the Met Police, that's the London Police, they sent someone over to do a mental health wellness check on him. Like, yes, sir. So you found these murder for hire orders on the dark web, and they're international and very important. Tell me, are the murder for hire orders in the room with us
Yeah.
right now?
Are they listening as we speak?
They did not take him seriously. It's fine, And then later on, they did take him seriously. They're like, well, it's not enough in the UK, so it's not our jurisdiction. And they call up the FBI, and they're like, no, it's impossible. Because, and again, this got to the unusualness of the crime. This is not the right specialists available. It's not easy to find them. So eventually, they phoned people up. That was hilariously failed. But they tried, and they're like, okay, we're going to have to literally hire people on the ground to go and knock on doors here. And that's what they did because during COVID, there was obviously no flying over to these places and visiting it. So yeah, they eventually the Kill List team hired local journalists in the US, France, and Switzerland, and elsewhere. You can knock on the door and brief people, and then after sufficient briefing, bring Carl in via Zoom call, and between them all, explain what's going on and explain the situation. But now, of course, we get into basically the true crime drama, people's lives are complicated part, right? Of which plays out again and again and again. So now you've got these people in front of you, people who were previously just like a name and address, and this person needs to die, and maybe a payment, and when should we die? Now you're finding out about things. I mean, we did this. We did do some OSINT. We did looked up things like court records and addresses and family members and all of that to try and we sometimes had a bit of an idea what we were getting into, which was good. But ultimately, you don't really know until you're sitting across from that person. And then suddenly you're finding out, oh, yeah, this person is going through this messy divorce. This person, we're having child custody issues. This person, there's ongoing threats and or stalking involved. There is, previous family feuds, inheritance issues, etc., etc. And they're as messy and complicated, heartbreaking as you might think.
That was actually the portion of this story that really humanized it for me.
Hmm.
It was when you were starting to interview these people on the ground that actually had real death threats against them, and they were like, "Oh yeah, that's probably my ex-husband, or that's,
Mhm.
somebody I know." That I forget what country it was, but there was one guy that they ended up chasing down, and he had like a room full of guns or something.
Yeah, it's in Switzerland, yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, these are absolutely real people on both sides of the coin here. There's real people that are living real lives that are going through real situations like divorce that, a lot of people in the world deal with. And then the other side of the coin, there's real people that are upset enough to pay real money to have somebody killed. It's fascinating and horrible all at the same time. Um, how did you deal with that? I mean, how did you
Well,
process that as it was going on?
at the time, it was when I was working Kill List, it's relatively easy because my job was to capture the data, refine the data, aggregate it, enrich it, annotate it, and send it over in a timely fashion. So I turned like a techie, I turned a data processing job into a software development job. So I built a bunch of ingesters, a bunch of aggregators, enrichers, and an annotation system, a database, a reporting system, UI, a sorter, a country breakdown viewer, an analyzer, a gap analysis tool, everything you might need in order to ingest maximum amount of data and produce maximally enriched reports. So yeah, and then sometimes I had to do things like crack custom Bitcoin obfuscation, for example. such as someone would say, "Oh, I paid this much money at this time. I had no wallet." So I'd have to use blockchain data to try and work out who, if I could link that to a particular payment based on approximate date, which I was in many cases. Or some would say, "Oh, yes, I paid money to this wallet, but the website is hiding the wallet, so it's only showing the last three letters of the wallets." So I work to download every single wallet ever, parse every single wallet ever which ends in that, and interrogate them to find out if there's a matching wallet. Thus, I'm able to enrich it and do it. Or if someone enters a payment, but I'm aware of some wallets also in use and some reference, I'm able to backtrack that and reconstruct that as well. And basically, where possible, basically maximally enrich these cases with very specific payments to very specific wallets linked to very specific individuals. So I was able to do both the data as is and a lot of the enrichment. That was my job for the period. And then we're at a novel podcast company. They would have some OSINT people do some further OSINT on the work, and then they'd work out basically, do we want to do a story about this? Do you want to send someone on the ground, or do we just want to use our existing police contacts? And sometimes it would be like a police contact. Sometimes we want to report it. And beyond a certain point, there were so many arrests and so many cases that they couldn't cover them all. So some of them we just know through the media reporting. We have no inside view or anything. But I collect them all, and I would do the intel that side.
Did
I'd
they
be
pull
looking
you in
for
to testify in these cases at all?
no, I haven't had to actually, because basically my reputation has been sufficient at the moment. So yeah, it's worked, and I couldn't do it. They can't pay me enough to do it, and there's so many cases. Like it would be
A full-time
economically
job.
impossible
Yeah.
to do it. If they would pay me, that would never matter, but they won't. So um, yeah, I'm just and also bear in mind, I'm using the in order to get around the questions about did you obtain this data legally or were any issues. I'm getting around this by saying, well, journalists are submitting information, they've got journalistic privileges and such like that, and we have information from a source. You know who it is, we know who it is, everyone knows who it is, but you don't have the right to ask us for that. Now, be
That's
investigating
interesting.
people.
So that's how they skated around the computer fraud and abuse, is that they just say you're a source and then they funnel it through a
It,
journalist.
it was mixed. It was mixed. I mean, I know for a fact at one point the Swiss police took the podcast company to court in the UK to compel them to reveal my name, and they basically said, "No, we're journalists. Fuck off." And the Swiss police were away. So that didn't work. They could have used Google, but they didn't. They decided instead to take the podcast company to court. And there's a lot of there's a lot of grey area in terms of knowledge in the US law enforcement. They know it's me, but they pretend they don't know it, and not everyone knows it. But it works from a legal point of view. And once you've initiated an investigation, you've got additional information, you've got additional evidence. Maybe you've got a confession, you've got this, you've got the Bitcoin data, you've got hard data from that. It doesn't all now depend on, well, this person saw this information. You've corroborated information independently, which is sufficient for investigation, and then it's usually sufficient for a prosecution.
Wow. That's nuts. So how's it going now? So you're still involved with this, or are you taking a break? It sounded like you were trying to find help or drum up funding to further.
There's no break, never any breaks.
There's no breaks.
As I said, uh, yeah, and now I run this myself. I don't think I'm going to get no agencies going to come along and take this all off my hands. No journalistic organization going to take this all off my hands. It's now me. Now it's me running it properly. So yeah, I've been calling for volunteers around the world. And by around the world, I mean around the world. So you can see on my website, hitmanscam.org, I publish some statistics about
It's
where in the
everywhere,
world the case. Yeah, I mean, like, I think one third are in the US, for example,
which is
but it's
terrifying, but yeah.
yeah, there's an emphasis towards richer countries and more English speaking
That's what I was
countries.
thinking. I was thinking that the people that had the disposable income would be where the hire for murder would be.
For example, in India, there's about 126 cases, but only 16 people paid money, for example, which is quite low. Whereas in the US, its number is higher and higher percentage paid because the website offers a flat rate, doesn't offer a regional pricing.
Didn't the Indian police sell you out too?
Well, yeah, there was one case. So yeah, again, the podcast company attempted to report one of the cases in India via the Met Police. The Met Police did some reasonably kick over there, but we know from the web because I've access to the website. So at the time the series was commissioned by the BBC sold the rights, and but the India police did something or other, then managed to basically confront the person behind the order and saying, "Oh, are you going on the dark web and killing people?" And he was like, "Nope, not me." And then he went back to the website saying, "How the fuck did the BBC find out about my mobile?" And which to this day he probably doesn't know.
Wow.
So yeah, that was our first and probably last experience with in the Indian authorities. I've recently spoken to someone in India about this, and he's saying it's a nightmare getting stuff investigated there. We plan to maybe publish some data there and drum up some social media support for it or something. Can't it's not it's both functional and non-functional. The Indian police. It's not my strategy for India is not going to be the same my strategy for the US, for example. But there's so many names there, for example, want it done with it. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, in summary, though, the countries are like US, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, ESSA, China, Japan, in Middle East, South Africa, South America, less of that, kind of corresponding with wealth and English speaking fluency. Um, but yeah, which is kind of good in the sense that most of these jurisdictions are English speaking, but bad because it doesn't matter because these people don't know about me. I can't talk to them. But I'm hoping my goal is to get all the ones in US, Canada, Europe where money is paid done, and eventually I reach a point where I've done everything I can. I'll start publishing the data,
I
but that may be years.
Have you looked into any investigative journalists in the US that'd be interested in taking up that mantle? I mean, I know we have quite a bit of, and I'm not suggesting you're a vigilante, but we have quite a bit of vigilante journalism in the US for things like catching predators and pedophiles. There are a ton of really great pedophile catcher groups on YouTube.
Mhm,
One of them,
mhm.
my favorite one being the Predator Poachers. There's this crew, they just travel around the country and they they get predators to uh, speak to their decoys, and they don't get them to break laws. The predators break laws, and then they show up at their front door, they show up at their job site, and they put them on camera and they get them to admit to these felonies, and the police come and arrest most of them. It's pretty amazing, and it's all grassroots. The police are very much a part of it, but an afterthought. Like a lot of the times they come in and they interview the person and then they call the police. I'm curious if you had considered doing anything like that with any investigative reporters in the US to
Not
try and
like that.
monetize this, because that's how
I
they're
mean,
getting
vigilante,
their money, through
yeah,
monetization of these
vigilante
videos.
group, yeah, and vigilante groups have mixed success. Sometimes successful, sometimes they're not. It varies. I've certainly worked with journalists, like working, for example, the early days working with journalists in California, used to go after all my California cases. I'm working with volunteers in the US on a state by state basis right now, as well as some private investigator contacts. And I've also got some interest from some corporate intelligence types, which might go somewhere. We'll see what happens there as well. Yeah, it's I'm open to most things really, but I wouldn't necessarily go as far as setting people up. That would be beyond my scope. I mean, for example, there was this case in the US where this guy from Beverly Hills, he was going out with this girl. He's like 24 or so. He's going out with this like 19-year-old girl from Arizona or something like that. They met on a Facebook fan page, etc. And when they broke up and it all went messy and terrible, etc. He's like, well, I guess I'll deal with this by having her killed, and paid something like
Naturally.
$12,000 to have this sweet 19-year-old girl killed.
Yikes.
Now, at the time, the FBI were uncertain as to the how solid the evidence would be, or how much was held up in court. So they went as far as working with the girl to stage her death and take photos of being murdered and pretending to be a hitman and getting him to send more money and confirm stuff like that. which is horrifically traumatized for the young woman. But they did get him, and he's in jail now. This guy's called Scott Burkett, and
Was that the girl?
sending.
Was that one of the girls that was featured on the kill list?
That's right. Yeah, the episode's called Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
But
also a fascinating. I mean, they're all fascinating stories, but that one was fascinating.
Let's
too.
explain some of this, right? How I feel about this. I didn't get into this. Well, I didn't get into just any of this shit. But I just think people shouldn't be murdered. Being murdered is bad. If someone tries to murder someone, you should stop that person being murdered. Very simple ideas.
Straightforward idea.
I didn't set out to traumatize people with knocking up murder photos or have split up families or traumatize people as people are getting arrested and whatnot. But I've done all these things, right, through my proxy. I'll give you an example, right? A lot of procedures are, this is similar around the world. If you get what's called an imminent threat to life, right, the police are legally obligated to tell the person they're under a threat. But for investigative purposes, they don't want to tell them anything. So come on, say someone would try to kill you, right? You might get the police, and if someone found out about it, police might knock on your door and say, "Hello, sir. I'm afraid we received a serious threat that someone wants to kill you." You're like, "Oh my god, tell me more. What's going on?" And they say, "We can't," and they would fuck off for up to a year, telling you nothing whilst you're living in fear, wondering what the hell is going on here. Is it my spouse? Is it my neighbor? Is it my colleague, etc.? Until hopefully after a year and a half, you get an arrest, and now yes, it was the ex-partner or the ex-partner's partner or something else. And then because the police don't want to tip off the potential suspect, they leave people traumatized for over a year. I hate this shit. I hate this. There was a woman in Norfolk in the UK. Now, to be fair, she was pretty unhinged. She was stalking her colleague for years. They're both married. There was a whole unwanted sexual advances between her and him, involving him moving jobs and him following her. It was a whole thing. Eventually, he decided, well, if no one can have him, if I can't have him, no one can have. Let's pay $15,000 to get him killed. And then she went to prison, leaving 5 children without a mother. I'm not happy about this.
Yeah, that's a lot of fallout.
Did I sign up for this? I didn't sign up for fuck all. I'm just a bloke. I'm not don't work. And so, a lot of the consequences of these cases, I don't like. I'm not saying, oh, wow, you put people away, you put people banging up the crooks and putting them in prison for all these years and look at justice being done. I'm not have to do that. I'm not to stop people being murdered. If they go to prison or not, that's not, I'm not having views on that. But I will flip, I will give you a flip side, though. There have been a minority of cases where I've been quite happy with the results. And this is, by definition, the most extreme cases. There is the case of Ron Ilg, the neonatal surgeon in Washington State, Spokane. And so he was an esteemed surgeon. He would deal with babies who are born to drug-addicted mothers to wean them off the addiction so they could live healthy, happy lives. Very noble cause. I'm sure in favor of babies being healthy and whatnot. But he was a psychopath. He had like a septic tank in his yard where he would put. Well, okay. To be fair, he alleges some of this was consensual. He had a septic tank in his yard where he put his lovers for a whole like BDSM torture thing.
That's weird.
He made his lovers sign contracts in blood. Anyhow, he was subject to complaint at his place of work by a fellow surgeon for probably being a fucking asshole, god complex person. Right?
That's what it sounds like.
Fired.
Yeah.
He got fired from his job. At a similar amount of time, his wife wanted a divorce from him because he's a fucking psychopath. And he, being a psychopath control freak, well, how can I solve these problems? I know, I'll turn to the dark web, of course, right? So whilst he's holidaying in Mexico with his mistress, he places an order to what he thinks is a Mexican cartel website to, first of all, break the hands of his surgeon colleague, so the surgeon colleague can never work again, paying a bunch of money for that. Secondly, he pays a bunch of money to get his ex-wife to be kidnapped and drugged and made addicted to heroin and tortured for days, to the point that she's made dependent on heroin, can self-inject heroin, and has blackmail videos made of her taking heroin to be forced to return as a drug slave to her husband, for example. Meanwhile, with his mistress. He got his mistress to sign a contract in blood saying that no matter what happens, you will baby, no matter what. So he's a psychopath. Now,
Yeah,
even him, though,
absolutely.
yet even him, I have some sympathy for. Only a teeny bit. Let me tell you what sympathy I have. So this was happening while I was in Mexico. Flies back to the US, and we're working with the FBI at the time. And the FBI meets him in the airport, and they're like, do you know anything about this website? It's like, not me. Don't know anything about this website. Okay, would you like to? And so he goes home, and then he tries to kill himself. I was like, well, I didn't sign up for this shit. I didn't sign up for people trying to kill himself. Now he didn't kill himself, so I have that. I have that on my conscience. So that's great. I'm happy again. And yeah, then they found they got his password from his safe, and they found the messages independently to corroborate him. And he got 8 years for trying to get his wife kidnapped and drug addicted, and his surgeon's hands broken. And even now, he's a nightmare trying to sell his book rights, has an obsessive fan rating YouTube videos and whatnot.
He's trying to
But
sell a
I'm
book.
happy. Yeah, well,
Don't
he
name it.
can't. There's literally laws preventing you doing this. But
Okay.
my point being is, he's one of the few cases where, like, he's a psychopath. He's an absolute
Absolutely.
psychopath. And he's now in prison, and his wife's safe, and his colleague's safe.
And
And
who knows
I'm
who else
happy.
is safe because of that. I mean,
Yeah.
murders that he hadn't even tried to commit yet.
Yeah. So I'm happy about that. I don't I don't have that. I'm not worried about that. I'm not conflicted about that. Similarly, there was this case where I got this message in saying, right, can you kill this 13-year-old in New Jersey? And now HSI did a good job here. They traced the payment because I didn't have any ID. And they found that this said 13-year-old was being groomed by this man, also in New Jersey, I think, and they were doing like intimate stuff over webcams and whatnot. And eventually, the 13 was like, "Oh shit, this is weird." Tells his parents, and suddenly the trap is closing on him, and he realized, "Oh shit, I'm I'm a terrible person. This is not going to go well." So he obviously says, "How I can solve this problem? I know. I'll get the child killed." So he pays $20,000 to get the child killed. Now it doesn't work because it's a scam website. In the meantime, the child has parents. Parents tell the police. He gets arrested. He goes to prison. He comes out of prison, and then the second investigation comes in saying, "By the way, you tried to kill the child." He goes back to prison.
Good.
So he's back in prison again now. So I don't feel bad about that. Like, you tried to kill the child you were, grooming over the internet, and to try and cover up your crimes, you can go to prison. I'm fine with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, wow. There's just so much to this story, and just from every angle, from like the hacking perspective of it, I find it fascinating. It's, real world, actually boots on the ground, doing something good, activism. I also empathize with your position of, there's really no good system to hand this data off to and solve these problems, which is crazy to say because there are good systems. It's just they're not willing to take it, right? Because of one logistic reason or another. And then, yeah, there's real humans, real people. You could be your next door neighbor that has a hit out on their life because somebody down the street doesn't like something they posted. It's just absolutely crazy. What would be the ideal situation for you in the next 2 years? What would be ideal for you for this? I mean, like, obviously the answer is all these cases are investigated and it's out of your hands and you can move on with your life. But how do you see that happening? What would be ideal for you to get you there?
So, I mean, anyone who understands, so getting people to understand this is the biggest barrier. It's a very unusual thing. It's very complicated, and people don't get it. So, people watching these videos and understanding what this is it gets past a huge barrier, right? So that's great. So, as I'm trying to increase my awareness of what I'm doing and the importance of it, so that's really important, right? So that's why I'm doing stuff like this. With that awareness, usual stuff. Obviously, I'll take donations. That would be nice, but not everyone can do that or wants to do it. That's fine. But I have so many jurisdictions to work in, be it in your state or your country. Chances are I need someone in your state or your country to work with to understand. Like, should you speaking to journalists? Should you speaking to law enforcement? Should you talk to individuals? How seriously do they take this? Do they understand cybercrime? What would the laws say about this? How can this be put in the right hands? I need people in these locations understanding the cases, understanding what the latest is on them, and reporting them to police or journalists and getting them done.
So let's drill into that really quick. When you say you're looking for a volunteer, who would be the ideal volunteer for you? Is it somebody that actively works with law enforcement already? Is familiar with
Everyone.
tech?
I've been contacted by people from a range of backgrounds, but it varies. I've worked with a lot of people, volunteers, are backgrounds in technology, which is great. I mean, your technology part's no problem for them, but I'm not actually necessarily calling them for their technological expertise. I'm actually calling them, are you willing to spend a bunch of time queuing in a police station and filling out a bunch of forms? Are you willing to call up a bunch of journalists or call a bunch of police until a report's done? That's that's the actual work. But, you know, honestly, it doesn't take a lot of skills to do that. It takes understanding of the story and a willingness and understanding of a local environment. You know, not all jurisdictions, the police can be trusted in the same way or approachable in the same way. Understanding who the appropriate agency is and how to approach them, and that will vary significantly. And to report these cases, that's why I so want that. So honestly, most volunteers can do that without any particular skills, just a bit of gumption and understanding of the case. Beyond that, I am reaching out to specialists as well, such as private investigators, private intelligence companies, and law enforcement and journalists. All of these agencies, and this varies country by country. My biggest bottleneck is exposure. A random journalist here about the country, they get it. A random volunteer here from another country, they get it. A random detective hears me, they get it. As long as it doesn't overlap with something else. I'm quite flexible. And whilst I can't talk about some of the results I've had so far, I can tell you, for example, some of these volunteers have reported cases which already led to arrests and
That's great.
are pending prosecutions. And this is a quite, I think it's a unique thing to try and build up a personal volunteer network to perform international investigations. I don't think it's been done before, but I can tell you, it seems to be working. And between the volunteers, the journalists, the law enforcement, detectives, and the intelligence people, as long as I cover all the jurisdictions, I'm going to get it done. And that's what I'm trying to do. Because saying the FBI will deal with it, this agency will do it, this journalist agency will do all of it. This is not the case. It's proven not to be the case. And I am realizing you need to make the case. You need to make it relatively local. You need to make it localized. You need to understand these people literally next door to you in your state,
They
down your
really
street.
are. They really are.
Yeah,
It's so crazy to think about that, but that's the truth.
yeah. And taking my sterile numbers off, there's 800 international murder plots. Ooh, it sounds all spooky and hacker and intel and whatnot. That's all that.
No worries.
Uh, so yeah, so you got these 800 murder plots around the way. It sounds very abstract and spooky and like a scientific, like a spy movie or something like that. Say no. Here's 10 people in your state. Here's their addresses. These ones have paid money. These ones, and look at all the data they've given, and look at all the conversations they're having, and look how, and please find out what's going on with them. Are they going through a divorce? Have they moved house? Are they subject to harassment? Are they still in the state? Are they still in the country? Is this something which is a police matter or a journalistic matter? Because I don't know. I've only done a minimal amount of work in most of these cases to find out, like, localize them to location and capture information. I don't know these people's stories. And I know some of these people's stories, and the ones I know, they're tragic, to do with relationship breakdown, inheritance, money, business,
And these are all
normal
time
people.
critical. Like all of them are time critical because either maybe that person will move or maybe the person that hired the hitman group will just follow through with it on their own. Like it is
But
time
let's talk
critical.
about that. Let's talk about crime. So we obviously talked about the Amy Owen case. Now, I'm still not going to give too much detail about this because it still hasn't come out. But during the course of doing Kill List, we got this case in, and it was something very serious. It was actually not to kill a woman; it was to kidnap a woman and sell her into sex slavery. And I think like $15,000 was paid or something like that. And the person saying, "Oh, can you get me a passport and help you flee the country with a child as well?" And I'm like, shit. So I've sent this to, and I sent this over, but we're like, well, we don't have a US jurisdiction yet, so we won't send it to the FBI yet until we have a state. Then they'll know what field office to send it to. So we wait a week or so, wait 2 weeks, and then we get a state in. I think it was Arizona. So we kicked to the FBI, and the FBI, they leaped into action. But it found out we were too late. Person, after being scammed at a website, had gone and killed a woman and killed himself in murder suicide. And that was within 1 week of the messages finishing.
Wow.
So you take that multiplied by my 800 odd of messages. People on the list are already dead. I know
Yeah.
this. I'm absolutely 100% sure I have not been able to save some of these people. Some of these people I think I have been able to save, like in Switzerland with the husband literally stockpiling his guns and zip ties in the house next door. I feel like that was going to go bad,
Yeah.
and I feel I may have saved her life, which is great.
Yeah.
The other
That
ones are
one
more.
was astounding.
Yeah. It is more debatable, the other ones, how violent these people are. I give to go on a little aside here. There's quite a lot of women on the website who tried to kill ex-husbands, partners, etc. And I would argue women in real life are not as violent as men, but they're relatively well represented on the website, right?
That's
Because it does
interesting.
involve physical stuff, like. But then, the women get arrested and they go to prison. So I put a lot of women in prison. And I'm not so happy about that actually, because yes, they did a crime. Yes, it was bad. Yes, they should be punished. But actually, they were less likely to actually murder the person. So my goal of stopping people being murdered, that was potentially unnecessary. But of course, it's out of my hands. I can't control that.
So did you see a bunch of requests? What percentage of the requests that came through were actually for hits and not for like human trafficking?
So the majority of the cases, like 75% are for murder, and the remaining of things are things like acid attack, rape, beating
Wow.
people up, maiming, and other miscellaneous services like
Which, by
that.
the way, you have to be an equal psychopath as to murder somebody is to like have to hire somebody to throw acid in their face. Like that's horrible. Or to rape them. That's horrible.
Mhm.
I just
It
it
is
doesn't make that
horrible.
crime any better than murder.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, some of people on the website trying to buy drugs, like relatively fine. That's fine by me. I have no issues with that. You try and buy your drugs and get scammed on the website buying drugs. I don't mind that.
How much does this take to keep going? Like if you were to get a lump sum donation that would eventually lead to you getting this off your hands, how much would that take? Or what does it cost day to day to run this?
No, that's a fair point. So I haven't got really I haven't really got a refined financial pitch in what would my business be if I had a bunch of money. But I mean, I spent a bunch of money in private investigators, for example, and I've run out of money. Can't
How
spend that
much how
anymore.
much does that
And
cost? Not to pry. I'm just trying to like if people want to
the
donate to
private
you, what is
investigator,
a good amount to donate?
well, it's not scalable. Private investigators, to get private investigators to do like a 2 to 3 day thorough investigation, we're talking about any between like $1,500 to $2,000. It doesn't scale at all.
So it's not a small amount
This is
though, by any means.
no, no, it's not going to work. This is why the volunteers are so critical. Other people, journalists, the intermediaries, people who already understand this through watching something like this, and then saying, "Well, I can help. I can spend. Well, it may be more than a couple hours over time. It may be equivalent of a couple of days over a month, getting these cases in the hands of the police. But once it's in the hands of police, then the people will be informed. Then investigations will happen, and then we can get I can get some closure, and these people can we can find out. And then, of course, you open the Pandora's box into their lives. To give you another example, some girl in Bath in the UK, so was some small payment to have her killed. Turned out the person was a extended family member, and he was obsessed with her and was placing hidden cameras in her bathroom and stuff like that, and was a complete stalker person. And then, I can't have her, I'll have her killed type thing. You're amazed what sort of accumulates in people trying to kill people. And I just see the people trying to kill people. The stories behind it are like each of everyone could be like their own TV episode.
Yeah, the entire time that I'm sitting here, I just and we keep going over this story, the more and more I keep thinking, man, this would make a great movie. It would make a great, series on TV. It would make a great anything, honestly. I mean, this is really what these novels are written of. It's so unbelievable that this is a real story. Not just the murders, but your portion of it as well. Like how you're wrapped into this and how, you know, you're driven to help notify these people and get them out of danger. And your inability to let this go because there's real lives on the line. It's just, yeah, it's fascinating. And I really hope that through, getting the message out like this and through your DEF CON talk and everything else that we are able to bring some volunteers to you and get some more of these things solved. That would truly be great.
Yeah, so it's going well right now because I've had a lot of interest following DEF CON talk. I'm in conversations with a lot of people. Obviously, when you work in volunteers, not everyone's going to work out. People's priorities in life change, their job situation change, their personal life situations change. But even if half of these people work out, I'm getting some traction. I'm getting cases reported. I'm getting cases investigated. I'm getting arrests. It's the next phase in my investigation network beyond what Kill List was doing. But it's highly dependent on my visibility and people reaching out and saying, "I get it. I'm in such and such area. Can I help?" Yeah, I'm saying I think it's getting some results.
Chris Monteiro, dark web Batman. Where can people
What's
reach
that
out
with
to you?
Batman? Batman's a billionaire. We fight street crime, by the way.
Yeah.
What's with that?
Where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you? What's the best way to
Yeah.
interact with you?
My main contact, I have a dedicated website about this right now at hitmanscam.org. It features a portfolio of my arrests, a summary of the situation, a summary of the outstanding cases where in the world or where in the US they're located, as well as how you might want to get involved and how to contact me to get involved. I might add more information there in the future about case studies and some of the stuff we talked about today, but mostly it's minimal information about my arrest history and getting involved.
Awesome. I look forward to hearing more about your story. I hope that you are able to make it to DEF CON. I'd love to meet you in person and maybe have a drink and talk about some more cool stuff that you're involved with. Thank you so
Well,
much.
we'll see how it goes. No probs, no probs. And well, I don't know how this story will fare for your usual listenership. Is that it's techy, but also there's human beings on the other side, and that's the hard part.
I think it's important. I think it's important that people hear not only that a normal, day-to-day IT person can have real change in the world, but the path that you took to get there and yeah, just everything about your story I think is valuable and fascinating. So I really appreciate your time today.
That's no probs, no probs.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks a lot.